face it, when we think about clinical trials, our minds don't exactly go straight to the finances, do they?
Right, not exactly the first thing that springs to mind, is it?
But you know what? What if I told you there was a way to actually make clinical trial financial management less about just crunching those numbers and more about unlocking these hidden opportunities?
Well, now that sounds a lot more interesting. Tell me more.
Exactly. And that's exactly what we're diving into today.
Sounds good. I'm all ears.
So if you're listening to this, you're probably already on board with the idea that clinical trial financial management could use, well, a little bit of improvement, to say the least. And today, our guiding star for this deep dive is a recent blog post that really caught our eye.
Okay. And what's this blog all about?
Well, it's all about this idea of using applications to essentially centralize all your financial data for clinical trials.
Okay. That sounds interesting, but I'm curious to know more.
Now, this blog author didn't beat around the bush. They basically came right out and said, look, we need a total data overhaul. We need a central hub, one place for all of our financial trial information. What are your thoughts on that?
I'd say they're right on the money with that one. I mean, let's be real for a second. Clinical trials, they come with these incredibly high stakes. We're talking about managing these complex budgets. We need to make sure we're jumping through all the regulatory hoops, dotting our I's, crossing our T's. And on top of that, the accuracy of everything, like down to the last detail, is absolutely paramount.
Yeah, absolutely crucial.
It is. And that's why having all of your financial data in one place, consistent and easy to access, it's not just about convenience. It's actually about setting the stage for a successful trial. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally get you. And actually, the blog post used a really powerful image. It compared this centralized data to this treasure trove of insights, which I thought was really interesting. So can you paint a picture for us? What kind of treasure are we really talking about here? And how does that translate into something tangible for someone who's actually, in the trenches running a clinical trial?
Okay, so let me set the scene for you.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Imagine you're planning a brand new clinical trial for, let's say, a novel diabetes treatment.
Okay.
And you're really trying to get a handle on those patient recruitment costs, which historically, let's be honest, have been kind of a pain point in the past.
Yeah, bit of a headache sometimes.
It can be. But here's the thing. With centralized data, you can actually look back at your past trials that were similar to this new one, and you might start to see, say, a consistent upward trend in those recruitment costs. That right there, that's a red flag.
Yeah, that's a big one.
It is. And it tells you right then and there that you need to investigate some new recruitment strategies, maybe think about exploring digital outreach programs before you commit to a budget that might not cut it.
That's a really powerful example. But I do have to say, I mean, it sounds amazing, but I can imagine that actually implementing a new system like this, getting everyone on board, that's got to be tricky. What are some of the biggest hurdles you've come up against when you're trying to get people to actually use these systems effectively?
You're absolutely spot on. It's not just about the tech itself, it's about the people using it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, people get set in their ways, they have their workflows, their routines. So we need to do a better job at explaining the why. It's not just about saying, hey, this new system, it'll reduce risk. We need to connect with them on a deeper level.
Give me an example.
So instead of just talking about risk reduction, we can say something like, remember that promising Alzheimer's drug, the one that unfortunately had to be shelved because of budget overruns? Well, with this new system in place, we'd be able to catch those red flags early on, keep the trial on track, and potentially change millions of lives. You see what I mean?
That is incredibly powerful
Right.
because it's not just numbers that we're talking about here. It's about the ultimate impact that these decisions have.
Exactly.
So as we start to wrap up our deep dive today, I think one of the biggest takeaways is that having all the centralized data is fantastic, but it's really only as good as our ability to use it effectively, wouldn't you say?
100%. Think of it like having this super high-powered telescope, but never actually bothering to take it outside and look at the stars.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the point, right? And that's what we're talking about here with this data analysis. It has this incredible potential to, I think, fundamentally change how we approach funding and resource allocation for clinical trials in the future. It's not just about looking at individual trials anymore. It's about using this data to strategically invest in the research that holds the most promise.
So to leave our listeners with a final thought today, if they could take away just one thing from this deep dive, what would it be?
I want everyone listening to really consider this. Imagine if we could use this data-driven approach to really prioritize those groundbreaking treatments, the ones that might seem too risky or too expensive right now. That's the future I think we should be aiming for, turning those what-ifs into realities.
Fantastic.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
I appreciate you joining us today. This is a great conversation.